Here we are with Zadie Smith, the slacker of our group, because she has not yet won a Nobel Prize. What's with that? Come on, Zadie, hop to it. I don't know if she will. Doesn't really matter. She's a fabulous writer. I love the way this person writes. The language, her control of language, how she uses dialect and accent and maneuvers through so many different characters. What we have, of course, is The Waiter's Wife, which is taken from White Teeth, Zadie Smith, right? This novel. It's a little different, though. I mean, it's not a straight excerpt. The way, for instance, Coetzee's Waiting for the Barbarians is just a cut. It's a straight excerpt out of the novel. This is not. It's actually a little different, and if you read the short story that we have, and then you decide you want to read the novel, White Teeth, you'll notice, first of all, that Archie is not with Clara right away. When some of this other action is going on, Archie and Clara are actually not together. They get together later. Okay. It's not hugely disruptive, but at first it's like, what? Wait a minute. No, Archie's already married to Clara. No. Took a while. Anyway, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but I do think it's really interesting. Because Zadie Smith is born in 1975, and she places her beginning of the novel, at least, in 1975, right? Which, of course, is a little unusual, just in the sense that, she has it back far enough in time. She has to have Samad and Archie be World War II veterans. Okay, so here we are later, years and years and years later, 30 years after the war is over. So they were young men in the war, of course, and now they are middle-aged men. We'll go with that description, since anybody in their mid-50s, even kind of late 50s, in my opinion, still, well, actually kind of young, but we'll say middle-aged. And they're both married to very young women. Not very, very, very young women. It's not freaky weird. But women who are a full generation younger than they are. Okay. The short story and the novel as a whole is able to examine issues of stereotyping, racial stereotyping, gender stereotyping, religious stereotyping, right? Ethnicity, because clearly even within certain groups, for instance, Alsana has a niece who she calls Niece of Shame, right? Because there's this age distinction, and the niece is, for lack of a better expression, more assimilated into the modern Western culture, while Alsana basically resists that assimilation, right? And so the kind of the openness and frankness of Western culture and sexual relations and what relationships are supposed to be like between couples, Alsana just totally rejects. She's very funny. I mean, she's very, very funny. You have Archie, he's kind of the white English man, right? And he's married to a woman who is of Jamaican descent. She's Jamaican. And also she comes from, and this is not really heavily emphasized in the short story that we have, but in the novel, it's a much bigger deal, from a religious sect that she broke away from, but her mother and, ironically, ex-boyfriend become full-fledged members of. And there's a certain dynamic with that going on too, as Clara basically tries to move away from her upbringing and her past. Alsana is trying to hang on to her upbringing and her past. The religion aspect is an interesting aspect of that too, because Alsana is not particularly religious. She conforms to the outward manifestations of religion, right? Although interior-wise not. Right? Samad and Archie, as I said, are veterans of World War II. They are buddies from World War II. What is that expression? Long time, no bloody smell. Right? There's that going on. So these two guys who lived in a tank together for quite some time during the war. So you got a greatest generation, as we call them nowadays, right? You have a younger generation, which probably presumably could be identified as baby boomers. But you also have an even younger generation, right? And I don't even know if baby boomers make sense when you talk about people coming from countries that are not the U.S., because the phenomenon of the baby boom, I think, is basically a U.S. phenomenon. But what Zadie Smith has done here is pulled all these different cultural threads together, all these threads of humanity that are so beautiful, diverse, incongruous in some ways. I mean, it seems like there'd be a constant clash, and they do clash sometimes, but other times they mesh, right? They work together. One of the funniest bits, of course, is how Alsana, with her very conservative demeanor and background, although again, it's not truly authentic because she's not like a true believer. And what does she do for a living? She sews sex clothes. I don't even know what to say to that, right? Like, okay, you're very uptight, and you're not really into it, but at the same time, there you are sewing together. I mean, who knows what, right? Oh my goodness gracious. Then there's Samad working as the waiter in a rather humiliating fashion, right? Because it's the only job as an immigrant that he can get. And what's interesting, and I'm going to be honest because I've seen it in real life here in the United States, is when people come to this country with high degrees, advanced degrees from other countries that are not accepted, right? So they got like PhDs or master's degree or the equivalent at some university in a foreign land, and they come back to the United States and they, or in this case Great Britain, and they're put at the bottom, right? They're put at the bottom. I mean, it happens. I've seen it happen more than once, in fact, where we see people who have these great degrees, and but the U.S. institutions won't accept them. There are reasons for that. I don't want to go down that particular road. The point is a huge loss of status, right? Economic status and social status. And so Samad has this funny sign that he envisions. I am not a waiter. It is, I am a waiter, but not just a waiter. I've been a student, a scientist, a soldier. My wife is called Alsana. We live in East London, but we would like to move north. I'm a Muslim, but Allah has forsaken me, or I have forsaken Allah. I'm not sure. I have an English friend, Archie, and others. I'm 49, but women still turn in the street. Sometimes. Please. Oh my gosh. 49. I want to be 49 again. So, he's got his experience. Archie has his. Clara has hers. Alsana has hers. And they all kind of rotate around. In the novel, it expands because they have children, and we follow the children as they grow up too, right? And they have their issues to deal with, and how they deal with that is different. But I think what saves it for me is Zadie Smith's humor. It's funny. It is a very, very funny piece. And the novel itself is a very, very funny novel. Now, it's not without merit, and what I'm saying is just because it's funny doesn't mean there's not anything serious. There's a lot of very serious stuff in it. I think Zadie Smith brings to it a a full sense of humanity. When Alsana takes off all of her clothes and puts on a raincoat, kind of like a sexual pervert or something is going to go out there. But she's just so angry, right? She just goes out there, and then now what do you do? Like, all of a sudden you're walking around London with a raincoat on and nothing on underneath. And you go to see your niece of shame? Seriously? I think she's got clothes on. Pretty funny. Pretty funny. So you have the Western values, Eastern values, you have the age conflicts, you have different religious conflicts, you have the generational conflicts, as I said, racial, and to a certain extent class. Notice the distinctions of what goes on in the restaurant where Samad works, the different waiters, the kind of politics. And I'm sure some of you guys can probably relate to that, kind of the playground politics that happen at almost any workplace. Only this is worse because Samad, his boss is part of his extended family. And he's being abused by his own boss. Although, frankly, he's not a very good waiter, so maybe he doesn't deserve a raise. Who knows? Anyway, I really hope you enjoy The Waiter's Wife. And if you're looking for a book to pick up, you could do a lot worse than picking up Zadie Smith's White Teeth.